In the soft glow of crystal chandeliers at La Belle Époque, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, a young waitress named Emily stood trembling behind the marble pillar. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Tonight was supposed to be just another shift. Pour water, take orders, smile politely. But when she saw the elegant older woman being helped to her table by her son, something shifted inside her. The woman had silver hair swept into a graceful bun, pearls resting gently against her pale green dress. Her eyes sparkled with quiet dignity. Beside her sat a tall, confident man in his early 30s, sharp jawline, tailored gray suit, and an air of effortless authority. He was Alexander Harrington, the billionaire CEO whose name appeared in every business magazine. Everyone in the restaurant knew who he was. What most didn't know was that his mother, Margaret Harrington, was completely deaf. Emily had learned sign language 3 years ago, after her younger brother lost his hearing in an accident. It became her quiet way of staying connected with him. She never imagined it would matter here, in this world of wealth and perfection. As she approached the table, her hands shook slightly. Alexander was speaking to his mother, his signs fluid and loving. Margaret smiled at something he said, then looked up as Emily arrived.
"Good evening,"
Emily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She placed the menus down, then hesitated. Instead of speaking only, she raised her hands and signed slowly. "Welcome to La Belle Époque. May I bring you some sparkling water to start?" Margaret's eyes widened in surprise. For a moment, the elegant woman simply stared. Then her face broke into the brightest, most genuine smile Emily had ever seen. Margaret signed back quickly, her movements graceful. "You know sign language? Oh, my dear, that is so rare. Thank you from my heart." Alexander looked up sharply, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Emily. He had expected the usual awkwardness, the waitstaff, who spoke loudly or avoided eye contact with his mother. But this shy young woman with gentle brown eyes had just signed perfectly. He didn't say anything at first. He simply watched as Emily continued signing while speaking, making sure Margaret could follow every word. When Margaret laughed at a small joke Emily made about the chef's famous soufflé, Alexander felt something stir deep in his chest. The dinner progressed smoothly. Emily moved with quiet confidence now, her shyness melting away each time Margaret's face lit up. At one point, Margaret signed to her son, "She has kind hands and kind eyes. I feel seen tonight." Alexander nodded, but his mind was racing. In his world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, people performed kindness for cameras or contracts. This girl wasn't performing. She was simply being good. As Emily cleared the dessert plates, Margaret reached out and gently touched her arm. She signed, "You made an old woman very happy tonight. What is your name, dear?" "Emily," she signed and spoke at the same time. Margaret smiled warmly. "Emily, you have a beautiful name and an even more beautiful soul." Alexander watched the exchange in silence. His usual guarded expression had softened. When Emily finally excused herself to attend to another table, he turned to his mother and signed, "I've never seen you smile like that with any staff before." Margaret's reply was simple and profound, "Because no one has ever truly seen me before." Not like she did. The next evening, Emily arrived for her shift expecting another ordinary night. But when she entered the staff room, her manager pulled her aside with wide eyes. "Emily, you have a special request. Table 12, it's reserved under Harrington." Emily's stomach flipped. She smoothed her apron nervously and walked out into the dining room. There at the same table sat Margaret alone this time. No Alexander, just the elegant woman with a single red rose in a small vase beside her. Margaret smiled the moment she saw Emily and immediately began signing. "I asked my son to let me come alone tonight. I wanted to talk with you properly." Emily sat down briefly when invited, something strictly against restaurant rules, but her manager had mysteriously disappeared. Margaret's signs were full of warmth as she shared stories of her life. Raising Alexander after losing her husband, young, building a foundation for deaf children, and how lonely elegant dinners had become because so few people bothered to learn, even basic signs. "You signed so naturally last night," Margaret said with her hands. "Not like someone who learned it for a job." "Why did you learn?" Emily hesitated, then opened her heart. She told Margaret about her little brother Lucas, who was now 12 and full of life despite his deafness. How she had stayed up nights studying sign language so he would never feel alone. how she worked 2 jobs to help pay for his special school. Margaret listened with tears glistening in her eyes. When Emily finished, the older woman reached across the table and took her hands. "You are not just a waitress, Emily. You are a light in this world. My son thinks the same." Emily blushed deeply. "Mr. Harrington, he barely spoke to me." Margaret smiled knowingly. Alexander doesn't speak much when he is deeply moved, but he noticed everything. What Emily didn't know was that Alexander was watching from a quiet corner table across the room, hidden behind a large floral arrangement. He had come not to eat but to observe, seeing his mother laugh freely, signing animatedly with this young woman who treated her with such genuine respect, cracked something open inside him. He had spent years protecting his mother from a world that often ignored or pitied her. Bodyguards, private interpreters, carefully chosen staff. Yet here was a simple waitress who asked for nothing and gave everything: her attention, her kindness, her time. Later that night, after Margaret left, Alexander approached Emily as she was wiping down tables. "Miss Emily," he said quietly, his voice deep and steady, "my mother hasn't stopped talking about you all day. She wants to see you again, and I would like to thank you properly." Emily looked up startled. "It was nothing, sir, It wasn't nothing," he interrupted gently. To her it was everything. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was not money but an invitation. "My mother is hosting a small gathering at our home this weekend. She would be honored if you came. As a guest, not staff." Emily's hands trembled as she held the card. I don't belong in that world, Mr. Harrington." Alexander's eyes softened. "Perhaps my world needs more people like you." The weekend arrived, and Emily stood outside the grand Harrington mansion, feeling completely out of place. Her simple black dress felt cheap. Next to the designer gowns she saw through the windows. She almost turned away when the door opened and Margaret appeared, arms open wide. "You came," Margaret signed excitedly, pulling Emily into a warm hug. Inside, the gathering was intimate, only 20 people, all close friends and family. Alexander watched from across the room as his mother introduced Emily to everyone, proudly signing how this young woman had made her feel truly seen. As the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. Margaret stood up and asked for everyone's attention. With Alexander translating her signs into speech for the hearing guests, she shared a story no one had ever heard. "For years I have felt invisible in rooms full of sound. People smile at me but never truly connect. Last week, a shy waitress changed that with nothing more than her hands and her heart. Emily, you reminded me that kindness is the most powerful language of all." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She hadn't expected this. Then came the twist that would change everything. Alexander stepped forward. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by raw emotion. He turned to Emily and began signing directly to her. Perfect, fluent sign language that no one in the room knew he had been secretly learning for months. Ever since his mother's hearing had completely faded years ago, he had hidden it, thinking it was enough to just hire interpreters. But seeing Emily's natural kindness had shamed him into finally using it openly. "Emily," he signed, his movements careful yet full of feeling. "You didn't just serve my mother dinner. You served her dignity. You reminded me that I have been protecting her instead of truly including her. Because of you, I am learning to be a better son." The room fell silent. Many guests had never seen Alexander sign before. Margaret covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But the deepest shock came next. Alexander continued, "My mother has one wish. She wants to create a foundation that trains young people in sign language and places them in service industries so that no deaf person ever feels invisible again. She wants you to lead it, Emily. Not as an employee, as the director, with a salary that will let you care for your brother and study whatever you dream." Emily stood frozen. This couldn't be real. She, a simple waitress from a struggling family, being offered the chance to change lives on a massive scale? She looked at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly, then at Alexander, whose eyes held a depth of emotion that went far beyond gratitude. In that moment, Emily realized the real twist. Alexander hadn't invited her because his mother liked her. He had fallen quietly, deeply in love with the kindness that lived inside her, the same kindness he had been searching for his entire life in a world obsessed with power and appearances. Tears flowed freely across the room. Strong businessmen wiped their eyes. Elegant women dabbed at mascara. Margaret pulled Emily into another embrace, signing over and over, "You are family now." Emily could barely speak through her own tears. "I don't know what to say. I only did what anyone should do." Alexander stepped closer. For the first time, he spoke and signed at the same time, making sure both his mother and Emily understood every word. "That's exactly why it means so much. In my world, people do things for gain. You did it for no reason at all. You reminded us all what humanity looks like when it's pure." Later that evening, as the guests slowly left, Alexander walked Emily to the garden. "Under the soft lights," he confessed quietly, "I watched you that second night from across the room. I saw how you made my mother laugh like she was 20 again. I realized I had been so busy, building empires, that I forgot the most important thing: connection. Real connection. You gave that to her freely. And in doing so, you gave it to me too." Emily looked up at him, her shyness returning but mixed with newfound courage. "I was just being kind, Mr. Harrington." "Alex," he corrected gently. "And kindness like yours is rare. It changes people. It changed me." 6 months later, the Seeing Hands Foundation launched with Emily as its passionate director. Her brother Lucas became one of the first young ambassadors. Margaret sat proudly at every event, signing happily beside her new daughter of the heart. Alexander never stopped learning. He proposed to Emily a year later, in the same restaurant where it all began. Not with a flashy diamond, but with a simple promise to build a life where kindness was the foundation, not an afterthought. At their wedding, Margaret gave a speech in sign language while Alexander spoke the words aloud. The final message she shared brought everyone to tears once more. "Never underestimate the power of a gentle hand and an open heart. My son found his greatest treasure not in boardrooms, but in the quiet courage of a shy waitress who chose to see the world through love." And so, what began as an ordinary dinner service became a beautiful reminder for the world. True wealth isn't measured in billions. It is measured in the moments when we choose to truly see one another, in the small acts of kindness that ripple outward and change lives forever. In a noisy world, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply listen, with our eyes, with our hands, and most of all, with our hearts.